The rain had been falling since late afternoon, slow at first and then heavier, as if the sky itself was tired. Water ran along the broken road, filling cracks and potholes. Streetlights flickered, casting weak yellow light on wet concrete. Most people had already gone home. Closing their doors against the cold wind, she walked carefully, holding a thin shawl close to her body. Her shoes were old, the soles worn down, and every step let water seep in. Still, she kept moving. Stopping was not an option. If she didn't reach home before dark, the streets would become even more unsafe. She had learned that lesson early in life. Her day had been long. She had worked from morning until evening, cleaning houses, washing dishes, and carrying heavy buckets of water. The money she earned was barely enough for food, but she accepted it without complaint. Complaining never changed anything. Survival required silence and strength. As she turned toward a quieter road near the edge of the neighborhood, something caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a pile of trash or a fallen sign. But then she saw movement, a slight shift, a weak motion that didn't belong to an object. She slowed her steps. There was a man lying on the side of the road, half in the rain, half on the muddy ground. His clothes were dark and soaked through, but even in the poor light, she could tell they were expensive. The fabric clung to him, heavy with water. His shoes were polished, though now covered in dirt. Her heart began to race. She stopped a few feet away. Many thoughts rushed through her mind. What if this was a trap? What if he was drunk or dangerous? People like her couldn't afford mistakes. Helping the wrong person could cost everything. She looked around. The street was empty. No cars, no voices. Only the sound of rain hitting the ground. Slowly, she moved closer. The man's face was pale. A small cut near his temple had dried blood around it, mixed with rainwater. His eyes were closed, his chest rising slowly. He was breathing, but weakly. She swallowed hard. Leaving him there would be easier. She could walk away and forget she ever saw him. Many others probably would. After all, she had her own problems, her own hunger, her own fragile life, but something inside her wouldn't let her move. She crouched beside him. Ignoring how cold the ground felt through her thin clothes, carefully, she touched his arm. "Can you hear me?" she asked softly. No response. She tried again, gently shaking his shoulder. "Please, wake up." The man groaned faintly. His eyelids fluttered but did not open, relief mixed with fear. At least he was alive. She knew she couldn't leave him like this. The rain was getting heavier, and the night colder. If he stayed there much longer, he might not survive. With great effort, she grabbed his arm and tried to pull him up. He was heavier than he looked. Her hand slipped, her muscles burned, and for a moment she nearly gave up. "Come on," or more to herself than to him. "Please." After several tries, she managed to get him into a sitting position. His head leaned forward and he let out a low breath, still barely conscious. She looked down the road. Her home was not far, but it felt like miles away now. Bringing him there would be risky. Her room was small, barely enough for herself, but there was no hospital nearby. Calling for help was not an option she could afford. She made her decision, step by step. She supported his weight, letting him lean against her shoulder. Each movement hurt, but she didn't stop. The rain soaked them both as they slowly made their way down the dark street. By the time they reached her place, her arms were shaking. Her home was a single small room at the back of an old building. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked in one corner, and the floor was uneven. But it was shelter. She laid him down on the thin mattress she slept on and quickly lit a small lamp. The weak light revealed more of his face. He looked younger than she had first thought, maybe in his early 30s. His features were sharp. His skin smooth despite the injury. She found a clean cloth and gently wiped the blood from his head. He stirred again, this time opening his eyes slightly. He looked around, confused. "Where?" He whispered. "You're safe," she said quickly, afraid he might panic. "You were hurt. I found you outside." He tried to sit up but failed, falling back with a quiet groan. "My head," he said, pressing his fingers to his temple. I know, she replied. Please rest. Don't move too much. He looked at her then, really looked at her as if trying to understand who she was. Who are you? He asked. She hesitated. No one had asked her that in a long time. I'm just someone who helped you, she answered. He nodded slowly, then frowned. And who am I? The question hung in the air. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. You don't know? He shook his head, his face tense. I don't remember anything. Her heart skipped. Nothing at all? She asked. He closed his eyes, trying to focus. No name. No place. It's all blank. Fear flashed across his face, raw and real. For the first time, she saw him not as a stranger, but as someone lost. She sat beside him on the floor. It's okay, she said, though she wasn't sure if it really was. You're alive. That matters. He breathed slowly, calming down. What happened to me? He asked. I don't know, she replied honestly. I found you on the road in the rain. He fell silent. She brought him a cup of warm water and helped him drink. His hand shook slightly. Despite his expensive clothes, he looked helpless, like a child who had wandered too far from home. As the night passed, the rain outside softened into a steady drizzle. The room grew quiet, broken only by his breathing and the sound of water dripping from the roof. She sat awake watching him. Many questions filled her mind. Who was he? How did he end up there? Would someone come looking for him? She had no answers. Before sleep finally took her, she whispered a silent prayer not for herself, but for the stranger she had pulled from the rain, somewhere deep inside. She felt that this night would change her life in ways she could not yet understand, and as the storm slowly faded, a story began, one that neither of them had chosen, but both were now part of. The next morning, the room was quiet, filled with soft light that sneaked in through the cracks in the old walls. The man still slept, the blanket she had found draped over his shoulders. His breathing was steady, more even than the night before, and she felt a small sense of relief. She moved around the room quietly, careful not to wake him. The small space was simple and sparse. A wooden table, a worn chair, a few dishes stacked near the corner, and the mattress where he lay. This was all she had, and yet it was enough to offer him shelter. Her thoughts wandered. How would she explain his presence if anyone came asking? And would someone come? He had no memory, but he looked important. Expensive clothes, well-kept shoes. Even in his confused state, there was a dignity in him that spoke of a life far different from hers. She sighed and returned to the mattress. Carefully, she shook his shoulder. Wake up, she said softly. It's morning. His eyes opened slowly, still clouded with confusion. He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. He tried to stand, but his legs wobbled. Don't rush, she said, placing a steady hand on his arm. Sit for a moment. You're stronger than last night, but still weak, he nodded, leaning back. He looked at her, his eyes searching for something familiar. There was a quiet tension in his gaze. I can't remember anything, he said quietly. Not even my name. I know, she replied, but it's okay. You're safe here. He studied her face, the lines of worry, the tired eyes that spoke of struggle. You're kind, he said. Why are you helping me? Her lips pressed together. She was not used to gratitude, especially from strangers. Because someone had to, she said simply. For a while they sat in silence. Outside, the city slowly came to life. The sounds of early morning traffic, distant voices, and the occasional bird filled the air. Inside, the small room was warm, quiet, and safe. She decided to make him something to eat. She had only a little rice and some vegetables, but it would have to do. She boiled water, washed the vegetables carefully, and started preparing a simple meal. He watched her with curiosity, not speaking, just observing. When she brought him a plate, he stared at it as if it were unfamiliar. I don't remember eating this, he admitted, a small frown forming. You will, she said with a soft smile. Eat slowly. He took a tentative bite. His eyes widened slightly at the taste. Simple, humble food, but nourishing. For the first time, she saw a trace of comfort on his face. After the meal, he leaned back, exhausted. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked. She shrugged. "Rest, heal. That's all you can do for now. When you're stronger, we'll think of what comes next." Days passed in a similar routine. She continued her work, sometimes leaving him alone in the room, sometimes staying nearby. He learned to eat, to move carefully, and to speak in small sentences. But every day, the question remained. Who was he? He started noticing small things in the neighborhood. Children playing in the narrow streets, vendors calling out their daily goods, the sound of water from a nearby canal. He seemed particularly alert to certain sounds, almost as if they stirred memories he could not fully grasp. One evening, he attempted to walk a little further. She supported him, holding his arm as they ventured to the end of the street. A small grocery shop caught his attention. He paused, staring at the shelves of bread, milk, and snacks. "I feel like I've been here before," he whispered, more to himself than to her. She looked at him, noticing the tension in his posture. "Memories take time," she said softly. "Don't push yourself too hard." As the days turned into weeks, he became stronger. His movements more confident, his voice more certain. Yet, despite all the progress, nothing from his past returned. He knew only what she had told him about the immediate world around him. Even his reflection in a small, cracked mirror was unfamiliar. He could see the face, but it did not feel like his own. He began to help her with daily chores, carrying water, sweeping the floor, even cooking small meals. She noticed that he had a natural skill for organization, for making the room feel more efficient. It was remarkable for someone who claimed to know nothing. One afternoon, while washing dishes, he suddenly stopped. He looked out of the small window at the street below, his hands still wet in the soapy water. "I feel like someone is looking for me," he said quietly. "Or maybe something." She wiped her hands and came to stand beside him. "You're imagining things," she said lightly, though a small shiver ran down her spine. "I don't think so," he replied. "There's a weight, a pressure. I can feel it." That night, sleep came harder than usual. Both of them lay awake at different times, listening to the faint sounds of the city. He was restless, his mind stirring with emotions he could not name. She, too, felt a strange unease, though she could not understand why. Over time, their bond grew stronger. He relied on her not only for physical support but for guidance, for comfort in the moments of fear and confusion. She, in turn, found a strange connection to him, a sense that this man, lost and nameless, had entered her life for a reason she did not yet understand. One evening, as they sat by the small lamp, he said, "I don't know who I am, but I know one thing. I wouldn't be here without you." Her heart ached. She was used to being invisible in the world, unnoticed and unappreciated. His words, simple yet profound, filled her with a warmth she had not felt in years. The days continued, marked by small victories. He learned to dress himself, to speak more confidently, and to recognize people in the neighborhood. She noticed how quickly he adapted. The way he could analyze situations and find solutions with surprising ease. Then, one day, a small incident changed everything. A neighbor mentioned a man missing from a nearby part of the city. The description was vague, but there were details that caught the man's attention. His hands shook slightly, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of something buried deep inside. She noticed immediately. "What is it?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes wide as if seeing her for the first time. "I think I might know who I am. Or I might remember something soon." Her heart raced. This was the moment they had both feared and hoped for. If his past returned, everything would change. And yet, despite the uncertainty, they both knew that their lives had already intertwined in ways neither could undo. The night fell, and they sat quietly, the lamp casting a soft glow on their faces. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Unaware of the quiet drama unfolding in a small, humble room, and as sleep took them once again, there was a silent understanding. Their journey together was far from over. The days ahead would bring answers, challenges, and surprises. But for now, They had each other, and that was enough. The days after that evening were different. There was a tension in the air that neither of them could ignore. The man moved with more awareness, watching people on the street, noticing details he had ignored before. Every sound, every glance, seemed to hold meaning he could not yet place. He continued to learn from her, and she from him. Despite his memory loss, he had skills that surprised her. He could fix small things around the house, organize the tiny space efficiently, and even manage the few possessions she had with a natural precision. She noticed these things quietly, wondering how someone so capable could have ended up lost and alone. One afternoon, small incidents stirred memories he could not explain. They were walking through the market, just to stretch his legs and get fresh air. The crowd was dense, voices calling out, carts clattering, the smell of spices and fresh bread filling the air. He froze suddenly. His eyes widened, and he let go of her hand. "Stop," he whispered, voice tense. She stopped immediately. "What is it?" He pointed to a man at a stall, a simple vendor selling fruit. The vendor waved at a customer, his smile familiar in some strange, instinctive way. "I've seen him before," the man said, shaking his head. "I know him. I can't remember where." She watched him carefully. "Your mind is trying," she said softly. "That's all it is." He nodded but didn't move. His body was tense, and for a moment she feared he might faint. She guided him to a nearby bench and helped him sit down. The crowd moved around them, unaware of the quiet struggle happening in the corner. He closed his eyes, trying to summon what felt like a memory on the edge of a cliff, just beyond his reach. His hands trembled. "It's nothing yet," she said gently. "You'll remember in time." For the first time, he looked at her not with confusion, but with gratitude and fear mingled together. "I don't want to forget that I'm here with you," he said. She smiled faintly. "You won't. I'll make sure of it." Back at the small home, the quiet seemed heavier than usual. He paced the room, restless, while she prepared tea. She had grown accustomed to his presence, the way his energy shifted the tiny apartment. And she had learned to read the small signs of his unease. "I feel like someone is searching for me," he said. Breaking the silence, she set the tea down and sat beside him. "Maybe someone is. Or maybe it's just your mind telling you something is wrong. You've been through a lot." He ran a hand through his damp hair, thinking. "It feels real," he said. "I can't shake it. There's someone out there connected to me. I can feel it." She nodded slowly, understanding that some instincts are stronger than memory. "We'll be careful," she promised. "No one will take advantage of you while I'm here." He looked at her then, with a mix of doubt and hope. "I don't know why I trust you. I shouldn't know you, and yet, I do." Her heart tightened. The world had taught her not to expect trust from strangers. But here he was, offering her something fragile and precious. The next few days brought small discoveries. He began to notice habits and gestures that seemed familiar, like the way a certain shopkeeper counted money, or the sound of a car horn in the distance. Each fragment brought unease and curiosity. He was certain there was a world out there he had lost, a life he had forgotten. One evening, she returned from her work to find him standing by the window, staring out into the dark street. He didn't move when she entered. "Something wrong?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the night. Then he turned slowly. "I think someone might know where I am," he said. "I can't explain why I feel it, but I do." Her heart raced. She had imagined the same thing herself, but had hoped she was wrong. "We'll stay alert," she said. "No one will come in unnoticed." That night, sleep was uneasy. Both of them were restless, aware of the shadows that seemed larger in the small room. He tossed and turned, muttering words she couldn't understand, fragments of thoughts he didn't yet fully grasp. She stayed awake longer, listening, waiting. The next morning, a small envelope appeared, slipped under the door. She picked it up carefully, heart pounding. Inside was a photograph, blurred and old, of a man in a suit standing with several other people. He stared at it, frozen. This is me," he said slowly, voice trembling. "I know it is. I just know." She sat beside him, unsure how to react. Who are they? I don't know, he admitted, but I need to find out. Days passed with this new tension. He tried to go about his small routines, but his mind was elsewhere, chasing memories and piecing together fragments of a life lost. She watched him quietly, noticing the small changes, the way he jumped at a sudden sound, the way his eyes tracked every passerby, the way he seemed to calculate movements with precision. It became clear that his past was not just ordinary. There was something significant about him, something powerful. She didn't fully understand it, but the signs were there. One evening, a man approached the small building. He wore a long coat, his face partially hidden. She saw him through the cracked window and immediately felt alarmed. She ran inside to warn him. "Someone's here?" she whispered. He turned sharply, his instincts taking over. Without fully thinking, he moved toward the door, ready to confront the stranger. Her hands were on his shoulders, urging caution. The man outside knocked softly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he said. "I'm looking for someone. A man who went missing recently. He is very important." The man inside froze. The words hit him like a shockwave. Important. That one word carried weight he could feel in his chest. A resonance deep and unsettling. "Why me?" he whispered, almost to himself. The visitor waited, respectful, sensing the tension. "I only want to make sure he is safe," he said. "That's all." She turned to him, her voice low. "You need to talk to him. If he doesn't, it will only make things harder." He nodded slowly, swallowing fear. With her support, he opened the door and faced the visitor. The man bowed slightly, acknowledging the presence of someone very significant. "You're safe here," he said. "We won't hurt you. But you need to know the truth about yourself soon." He stared at the visitor, heart racing. Something deep within stirred, a memory struggling to emerge from the darkness. That night, they sat together, the visitor sharing vague details about his past, enough to unsettle him but not enough to overwhelm. He learned that he was connected to a powerful world, a life of influence and wealth, and that many people had been searching for him. She watched him process it, seeing the conflict in his eyes. Part of him wanted to run back to the comfort of the small room, the simple life he had started to know. Another part, deep and instinctive, called him toward a reality he did not yet fully understand. And as the night deepened, he realized that his life was about to change forever. The quiet days were ending, and the truth, both shocking and inevitable, was waiting just beyond the next sunrise. The morning sunlight seeped through the cracks in the walls, casting soft streaks across the small room. The man sat at the edge of the mattress, staring blankly at his hands. The previous night's conversation with the visitor had left him restless and uncertain. He felt like he was on the edge of a precipice, about to see a world he had no memory of, yet somehow belonged to. She entered quietly with a cup of tea, placing it beside him. "Drink this," she said softly. He took the cup, his hands still trembling. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "Everything I thought I knew about myself, it feels like a lie." She sat beside him. "It's not a lie. It's just that you haven't remembered yet. Your past is still waiting for you. You survived a lot to get here," he nodded slowly. "I trusted you when I had nothing. And now, I think the world I belonged to, the one I forgot, is more dangerous than I imagined." The day passed in uneasy quiet. The man tried to focus on small tasks, but his mind kept returning to the fragments of his past. The visitor's words replayed over and over, that he was important, that people had been searching for him, that his life had influence and power he could barely imagine. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. Both of them froze. She motioned for him to stay quiet. The visitor had warned them that others might come, people who would not be kind if they discovered where he was. Slowly, she opened the door a crack. A man stood there, different from the visitor, more assertive, his eyes sharp. He looked around the small room, noting every detail. "You must be the one who helped him," the man said, voice calm but firm. "He's my responsibility now." The man inside the room tensed. "Responsibility?" he asked. What do you mean? You're safe here, the new man replied. But it's time you understand the truth. You are not just anyone. You are someone the world has been waiting for. A billionaire. A man whose life and decisions influence thousands. People have been looking for you, concerned for your safety. He stared, unable to speak. The words were shocking, almost unbelievable. A billionaire? He repeated, his voice trembling. I don't understand. She held his hand, a silent support. We'll figure it out together, she whispered. The man invited them both to leave the small home and go to a nearby hospital for a checkup. He insisted on privacy and security. As they walked through the streets, the man's mind raced. Every familiar gesture, every sound, every face in the crowd felt slightly foreign now. He was returning to a world that he could not yet recognize. At the hospital, doctors confirmed his identity. His name, his age, his background, all of it, matched a prominent figure in business circles. They explained that he had survived an accident that left him unconscious and without memory. There had been attempts on his life, rivals who wanted him out of the way. The search had been desperate. The man sat quietly, absorbing the information. He could feel the weight of it settling into his chest. His past life, once invisible and unreachable, was now tangible and frightening. People he had never met but who had been affected by his decisions were looking for him, waiting for him to return. She stayed close, offering a grounding presence. Despite the shocking news, he found comfort in her calm demeanor. Once discharged, they returned to her small home, though now they were aware that her apartment was no longer sufficient to hold the world he was stepping back into. Security personnel and staff began contacting him, ensuring he was protected. The contrast between his humble shelter and the world outside was jarring. Over the next few days, he began to remember fragments of his life. Faces of people he had worked with, decisions made in boardrooms, places he had visited, yet the memories were incomplete, scattered like pieces of a puzzle. He struggled with guilt and confusion, feeling torn between the simple life he had just started to know and the responsibilities. Waiting for him, she watched him closely. You don't have to rush, she reminded him. You've already survived so much. One step at a time. He appreciated her presence more than words could express. He had faced wealth and power before, but no one had ever cared for him as she did. That realization was both comforting and unsettling. One evening, as they sat together, he turned to her. I never expected to find someone like you. Someone who didn't care who I was, who just helped me because it was the right thing to do. Her eyes softened. I didn't expect to find you either. But life has a way of bringing people together, he nodded, a mixture of relief and determination in his eyes. I need to return to my life, but I won't forget what you've done. And I won't forget you, she smiled faintly. I don't expect you to. Just be careful. The following days were filled with preparation, meetings with staff, security briefings, and careful planning for his re-entry into the world he had lost. Yet even with all the arrangements, he remained unsettled. He was learning to navigate the world of wealth and influence again, but the memories of the small, simple life with her lingered in his mind. He realized that power and responsibility were heavy burdens, but kindness, trust, and human connection were rare treasures. And in that realization, he found a new sense of purpose. Finally, the day came when he had to step out into the public eye. Cameras, reporters, and associates awaited him. He felt a wave of anxiety, but also a strange sense of readiness. He knew who he was now, at least in part, and he knew that the girl who had saved him was an inseparable part of his journey. As he faced the world again, made a silent promise to himself. He would protect her, honor her, and make sure that the selfless act that had saved him would never be forgotten. Her bravery and kindness had changed his life forever, and as the sun set on the horizon, he realized that the shocking truth of his identity was only the beginning. The choices he would make, the people he would help, and the life he would lead were all intertwined with the girl who had once offered him shelter in a small, humble room. Life was moving forward, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning was quiet, but there was a tension in the air that neither of them could ignore. The man, now fully aware of his identity, stood by the window of the temporary suite he had been staying in. Outside, the city was alive with activity. Unaware of the story that had just unfolded in a small, hidden corner of its streets, she entered the room with a cup of tea, holding it carefully. "You need to eat something," she said softly. He took the cup, staring out at the streets below. "I've never felt so much responsibility," he said, "and yet I've never felt so grateful." She watched him quietly. She had been through a lot herself, but she never expected to be part of a story like this. Her life had been difficult, filled with hardship. But the connection she had formed with him was something she had never anticipated. "I don't know what the future holds," he continued, "but I do know this. None of it matters if I forget the people who truly cared for me." She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth in her chest. "You won't forget," she said, "and you don't have to face it alone." Over the next few days, he began re-entering his world. Meetings with advisors, briefings on his businesses, and interactions with associates filled his schedule. Despite the overwhelming flood of responsibilities, he remained grounded by the memory of her care and kindness. He watched her from time to time, amazed at how effortlessly she managed the little things in life that he had once taken for granted. She had no wealth, no influence, yet she had given him the most important thing: hope when there was none, and compassion when he had nothing. One evening, he asked her to join him on a walk. The streets were quieter, the sun dipping low on the horizon, painting everything in a golden light. "I want to show you something," he said. She followed him, curious and a little cautious. The world he was re-entering was unfamiliar, filled with wealth, influence, and power. Yet she walked beside him, trusting him, and feeling a connection that had grown deeper with each passing day. They reached a large building, sleek and modern, a stark contrast to her small home. He stopped and turned to her. "This is where I work. This is my world. But I want you to know that none of it matters without the people who make it worth living." She looked at him, unsure how to respond. The magnitude of his life, the responsibilities, the influence it was overwhelming. "I want you to have a choice," he continued. "You helped me when I had nothing. Now, I want to help you. I want to make sure your life is different, safer, better. You don't have to struggle anymore." She felt a lump in her throat. She had grown used to hardship, to accepting what life gave her without expectation. Yet here was someone offering her a chance she had never dared to imagine. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just trust me." Over the next weeks, he made arrangements for her. A small apartment of her own, a chance to study, and opportunities she had never dreamed of. Yet, he did not want to take away her independence. Every decision respected her wishes, her dignity, and her strength. They spent time together. Not as master and helper, but as friends, equals. Connected by the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. The city around them was vast and complex, but in each other's presence, they found simplicity and comfort. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a rooftop garden he had arranged, he turned to her. "You changed my life," he said. "I thought I had everything, but I didn't. You showed me what really matters." She looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't do much," she said softly. "I just helped when I could." "That's exactly why it mattered," he replied. "Because you didn't think of yourself. You helped because it was the right thing to do. And that is worth more than all the money or power in the world." The days turned into months. He resumed his work, but his priorities had shifted. Decisions that once were made solely for profit were now tempered with compassion. His influence became a force for good, a way to help others who were struggling like she once had. She, in turn, pursued her own path, studying and working, building a life she could be proud of. Their bond remained strong, a quiet understanding that neither could forget the other. One evening, they walked through a quiet park, watching children play and families laugh. He took her hand gently. "I know the world can be cruel," he said, "but it can also be beautiful. And sometimes, it takes the smallest acts of kindness to change everything." Begins with a quiet morning. sunlight spilling into the room where she now lived comfortably, yet still surrounded by reminders of her past life. She sat at the small table, sipping tea, thinking about the journey that had brought them both to this point. Despite the changes, she felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. He entered quietly, carrying a small folder. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of responsibility he had learned to bear. He placed the folder on the table. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about everything we've been through, about the lives I used to lead and the lives I still have the power to touch." She looked up, curious. "What is it?" "I want to use my position not just for business, but to make a difference. To help people who have no one. People like you once were." Her heart warmed. She had always dreamed of helping others, but survival had come first. Now, the man who had once been helpless was planning to change lives on a massive scale. And he wanted her involved. Over the next days, they began planning together. She shared her knowledge of the struggles ordinary people faced, the small injustices that went unnoticed. He listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions, and promising to use his resources to address these issues. They visited neighborhoods where help was most needed. Schools that lacked basic supplies, clinics that struggled with limited resources. He was shocked by the scale of the need, but she moved with confidence. Showing him what mattered most, he marveled at her resilience and insight. "You see what I've missed?" he said. "I've lived in luxury but never really seen people. Not like you see them." She smiled faintly. "It's easier when you have to survive. You learn to notice what matters." Together, they began setting up programs for education, health, and support for struggling families. His influence and resources made rapid changes possible, while her understanding of the human side ensured that the programs were effective and meaningful. Yet, despite the heavy work, they found moments of quiet together. They would walk through quiet streets, talk about simple things, or watch the sunset from a small rooftop garden. These moments reminded them both of the journey that had started with a simple act of kindness. One afternoon, they were visited by children from one of the schools they had supported. The children were curious, excited, and full of questions. He knelt down to speak with them, listening intently. Amazed by their curiosity and honesty, she watched, feeling proud and moved. He was not just powerful in the traditional sense, but he was learning empathy, compassion, and humility. The transformation was remarkable. Over time, his memory of the past life solidified. Faces, places, and events returned in fragments, but now he could place them within the context of the present. He understood who he had been, but he also realized that his future was no longer just about business or power. It was about making a meaningful impact. She noticed the changes in him, it's also in herself. The journey had given her confidence, purpose, and the realization that she was capable of far more than she had imagined. Their partnership was no longer about rescue or survival. It was about mutual growth and creating a better world together. One evening, as they prepared for a community event, he turned to her. "I could have returned to my old life and forgotten everything," he said, "but I can't. You reminded me of what really matters. And I want to continue that lesson." She smiled. "We both learn from each other," she said, "and we can continue learning together." The event was a success. Children laughed, families received support, and the community saw the positive impact of their efforts. He felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced. Realizing that wealth and influence were meaningful only when used to help others, as the evening ended, they stood together, watching the city lights shimmer across the skyline. It was a different life from the one they had known, full of challenges, responsibilities, and opportunities. He turned to her. "I want you to continue with me to be my partner in this. Not just in projects, but in life. Your insight, your heart, your courage is irreplaceable." She looked at him, emotions welling up. "I never imagined my life would lead here," she admitted. "But I trust you, and I want to keep helping in any way I can." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, both of them felt ready to face it together. Their journey, which had begun with a stormy night and an act of kindness, had transformed into a life of purpose, compassion, and shared dreams through all the challenges, surprises, and responsibilities. They had found each other. And in finding each other, they had found a deeper understanding of humanity, the power of kindness, and the strength that comes from facing life together. And so, as night fell over the city, they stood together, ready to continue their journey, not as a billionaire and a poor girl, but as equals partners and friends who had changed each other's lives forever. Their story, born of unexpected circumstances, had grown into a story of hope, courage, and the enduring power of human connection. Part 6 begins with a quiet morning, sunlight spilling into the room where she now lived comfortably, yet still surrounded by reminders of her past life. She sat at the small table, sipping tea, thinking about the journey that had brought them both to this point. Despite the changes, she felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. He entered quietly, carrying a small folder. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of responsibility he had learned to bear. He placed the folder on the table. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about everything we've been through, about the lives I used to lead and the lives I still have the power to touch." She looked up, curious. "What is it?" "I want to use my position not just for business, but to make a difference. To help people who have no one, people like you once were." Her heart warmed. She had always dreamed of helping others, but survival had come first. Now, the man who had once been helpless was planning to change lives on a massive scale, and he wanted her involved. Over the next days, they began planning together. She shared her knowledge of the struggles ordinary people faced, the small injustices that went unnoticed. He listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions, and promising to use his resources to address these issues. They visited neighborhoods where help was most needed, schools that lacked basic supplies, clinics that struggled with limited resources. He was shocked by the scale of the need, but she moved with confidence, showing him what mattered most. He marveled at her resilience and insight. "You see what I've missed?" he said. "I've lived in luxury, but never really seen people. Not like you see them." She smiled faintly. "It's easier when you have to survive. You learn to notice what matters." Together, they began setting up programs for education, health, and support for struggling families. His influence and resources made rapid changes possible, while her understanding of the human side ensured that the programs were effective and meaningful. Yet, despite the heavy work, they found moments of quiet together. They would walk through quiet streets, talk about simple things, or watch the sunset from a small rooftop garden. These moments reminded them both of the journey that had started with a simple act of kindness. One afternoon, they were visited by children from one of the schools they had supported. The children were curious, excited, and full of questions. He knelt down to speak with them, listening intently. Amazed by their curiosity and honesty, she watched, feeling proud and moved. He was not just powerful in the traditional sense, but he was learning empathy, compassion, and humility. The transformation was remarkable. Over time, his memory of the past life solidified. Faces, places, and events returned in fragments, but now he could place them within the context of the present. He understood who he had been, but he also realized that his future was no longer just about business or power. It was about making a meaningful impact. She noticed the changes in him, but also in herself. The journey had given her confidence, purpose, and the realization that she was capable of far more than she had imagined. Their partnership was no longer about rescue or survival. It was about mutual growth and creating a better world together. One evening, as they prepared for a community event, he turned to her. "I could have returned to my old life and forgotten everything," he said, "but I can't. You reminded me of what really matters, and I want to continue that lesson." She smiled. "We both learn from each other," she said, "and we can continue learning together." The event was a success. Children laughed, families received support, and the community saw the positive impact of their efforts. He felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced. realizing that wealth and influence were meaningful only when used to help others. As the evening ended, they stood together, watching the city lights shimmer across the skyline. It was a different life from the one they had known, full of challenges, responsibilities, and opportunities. He turned to her. "I want you to continue with me, to be my partner in this. Not just in projects, but in life. Your insight, your heart, your courage is irreplaceable." She looked at him, emotions welling up. "I never imagined my life would lead here," she admitted. "But I trust you, and I want to keep helping in any way I can." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, both of them felt ready to face it together. Their journey, which had begun with a stormy night and an act of kindness, had transformed into a life of purpose, compassion, and shared dreams through all the challenges. Surprises and responsibilities, they had found each other. And in finding each other, they had found a deeper understanding of humanity, the power of kindness, and the strength that comes from facing life together. And so, as night fell over the city, they stood together, ready to continue their journey, not as a billionaire and a poor girl, but as equals, partners, and friends who had changed each other's lives forever. Their story, born of unexpected circumstances, had grown into a story of hope, courage, and the enduring power of human connection. She smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. And sometimes, it takes the smallest people to remind the powerful of what really matters. She replied. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise of gratitude, respect, and loyalty. In that moment, they both knew that their lives had been forever altered, not by wealth or power, but by the human connection that had saved him and changed them both. The city lights began to glow as the sun disappeared, and they stood together, knowing that no matter what came next, they had each other. The shocking events that had brought them together had led to something far greater: trust, respect, and the understanding that real life, with all its unpredictability, was best faced together. And so, their story continued, not as two strangers, but as to people whose lives had been forever intertwined by courage, kindness, and the power of compassion